Now, do you support the implementation of the E-Verify system in both the federal and state contractors as well as the private sector?
I do. The E-Verify, and I've just been spending a lot of time going through this program, and it seems to be a pretty good program, meaning that there's no barrier to hiring folks initially. So there's not, sometimes I'm concerned with our small businesses that we put burdens that they can't afford. Well, this E-Verify is very affordable. It allows you to hire, allows you to go ahead and run their names. It seems to have a lot of safeguards in it. So we're now currently looking at including that in the bill that I have filed, because it just seems like such a great program to ensure that our businesses are actually able to verify who they're hiring. Currently, a lot of the illegals have false documentation. So whether the farmer or the small businessman who hires these folks, the illegal has a driver's license. They have a social security number, but sometimes it's forged. It's a fraudulent document. So this will help them identify who's legit and who isn't.
So you're saying even in the private sector, because a lot of illegals are going to work because of the E-Verify system being implemented now around the state through the agencies, the government agencies, they're moving towards the private sector. So do you also, what you're telling us is that you do support E-Verify program for the private sector?
Well, I do. I absolutely do. My current bill already has an E-Verify provision for public and governmental workers, and we're working on including that for everyone.
So tell me of some bills you have proposed, aside from the one you just mentioned. What other bills do you have working in the state Senate? Because I know session is coming up next month, I believe.
Sure. Well, these are extraordinary times. It seems like every week the federal government is doing more and more to take away state sovereignty, doing more and more to take away our rights as individuals and as business owners. And so I have filed several pieces of legislation that really protects state sovereignty, protects individual freedoms, protects our rights, one of which is the Florida Healthcare Freedom Act. And what that does, it'll be a constitutional amendment, so it'll have to be approved by the voters this November, and it will state and place in the Florida Constitution an amendment that says that you, as a Floridian, will always have the right to decide what health care plan is best for you and your family, and you cannot be forced into some government-mandated health care plan. And so we're really excited about it. I think my chances of passing it are good. I think it's very timely. I think it's an important individual right for people to be able to decide what health care plan is best for them. And so I'm quite confident if we can get it on the ballot, we'll pass it. And more specific to agriculture, I can tell you, after now 10 years of serving as a citizen legislator, and my experiences as a business owner, is almost all our problems can be attributed to government. And generally the answer is less government. And so agriculture is no different. The greatest threat to agriculture is not the weather, it's not plant diseases or pests, it's government. Whether it's the local city or county zoning out agriculture, whether it's the state or federal government placing these onerous regulations. So to deal with that, I have a bill called the Florida Food Freedom Act, and what that'll do is essentially for small farmers and ranchers who want to directly sell their produce to the consumer at a market, a food market, or on the ranch or on the farm, that we're going to deregulate that business. We're going to take off those very, very costly provisions that we require right now that, quite frankly, is impeding the entrepreneurial spirit of all these small farmers. I mean, we're doing every day. We are doing more and more to drive agriculture out of the state, drive it out of the country, and it's because of government rules and regulations. And so this deregulates it for the small farmer. I think it'll break open that great American entrepreneurial spirit. I think we can see a renaissance of small farms across the state. I think you'll see farmers markets flourish. I think people who are concerned about healthy food want to buy fresh vegetables, fresh produce at these markets, and this bill will allow them to do so.
How do you feel about offshore oil drilling?
I'm for it, 100%. We have the ability right now to drill on our shores safely with pumping rigs that are below the surface of the water, with the safety mechanisms that have been developed over the last 40 years to ensure there are no oil spills. The most dangerous thing to our environment is an oil tanker. A tanker coming from Saudi Arabia or Venezuela that would spill on our shores. All our major oil spills have been tankers. Right. You never have a problem with oil pipelines.
And lastly, How do you feel about the label they've been placed on you as far as being the most conservative candidate in the race?
Well, I tell folks sometimes not to believe a single thing I say as a candidate. Then maybe you ought to look at my voting record. Maybe you ought to look at who I am as a gun shop owner, as a small businessman, as a military NCO, and that tells the story. You look at the bills that I file, and you'll see that I consistently vote for and fight for and promote bills that are about smaller government, that are about freedom, free enterprise, about all the values that make this country great. I mean, we have a model, a 200-year experiment that we know what works, and freedom works. And we are moving every day, unfortunately, we're moving away from that. And quite frankly, it's been a bipartisan problem. The federal government has grown day in and day out, whether it was a Republican administration or a Democrat administration, and now it's time for us to return, and you see the movement, return back to that small government roots, those constitutional roots that made this country great. And so I'm part to be, I'm glad that I have a reputation for being a small government conservative. Many consider me the most conservative member of the Florida Senate, and it's that attitude, that small government, free enterprise attitude, that I plan to take as our next Commissioner of Agriculture.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Carey.
Oh, thanks for
Appreciate it.